If you ever want to know where you truly stand with your family, just wait for the moment when they have to choose between you and something else they love. That's when you'll see the truth. In my case, they didn't even hesitate. They picked my sister's golden retriever over me. And I wish I could tell you it was a misunderstanding or a joke, but it wasn't. Stay with me through this story, because it's not just about a dog. It's about years of being invisible in my own home, about realizing how little my life meant to the people who were supposed to love me most. My name is Lena Carter. I'm 24, and a few months ago I was living with my parents while I tried to rebuild my life after a breakup that left me with almost nothing. I thought it would be temporary, just until I could save enough to get back on my feet. My mom, Patricia, is the kind of person who hates conflict, but somehow manages to create it by always taking the easiest side. My dad, Robert, is quiet, but not in a warm way, more in that heavy, disapproving way that makes you feel like you're always failing. And then there's my older sister, Emily, 26, spoiled, knows how to get exactly what she wants. Her pride and joy is Cooper, her golden retriever, who in my parents' eyes can do no wrong. From the day I moved back, Cooper had more rights in that house than I did. He had his own bedroom, the guest room, which meant I slept on the couch more nights than I can count. If Cooper wanted quiet, I was told to keep the TV off. If Cooper needed a walk, it was me holding the leash, rain or shine. Even when I wasn't feeling well, I'd hear, "Lena, can you take him out? Emily's busy." It wasn't just about the dog. It was every time Emily borrowed my things without asking, and my parents told me not to make a fuss. Every time my needs were treated like an inconvenience, while hers were urgent. It was years of feeling like the extra piece in my own family. I didn't see it coming, but there was a moment, one night, that made everything crystal clear. A moment when I needed them more than I ever had before. And they looked me in the eye and chose him. Cooper. That's the night everything changed. It's the night I realized I wasn't just living in the wrong house. I was living in the wrong place entirely. And it's the night I decided to leave for good. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I left something else behind instead. Something that would make them finally see exactly what they'd done. Something they couldn't ignore. A letter. Growing up, I used to joke that I had middle child syndrome. Even though it didn't make sense. I only had one sister. But that's exactly how it felt. Emily was the star. She got the praise, the attention, and the benefit of the doubt. I got the leftovers. If she got a B on a test, my parents said she was trying her best. If I got an A, it was, "Good, now keep it up." Nothing I did was ever enough to match her in their eyes. When Emily brought home Cooper, her golden retriever, everything shifted even more. I didn't think it was possible for me to be pushed further down the list of priorities, but I was wrong. From the moment his paws touched the living room floor, Cooper became the crown prince of the Carter household. He had his own special food, his own expensive bed, and even his own bedroom, the guest room. That meant if we had visitors or Emily wanted to stay in there with him, I'd be told to take the couch. It was always said so casually, like, "You don't mind, right? Cooper sleeps better in that room." At first, I went along with it. I didn't want to cause trouble, and I figured it wasn't worth making a scene over a dog. But over time, it became clear that this wasn't just about Cooper. It was about how little my comfort mattered compared to Emily's happiness. It was small things at first. If Emily had plans, I'd be the one asked to walk Cooper, even if I was sick or exhausted. I remember one day when I had the flu so bad I could barely stand, and Mom still knocked on my door asking if I could just take him out for a quick one. Emily had an important brunch, and apparently that was more important than the fact I had a fever of 102. Then there were my belongings. Emily had this habit of borrowing my clothes, my makeup, even my headphones, always without asking. When I'd call her out, Mom would say, "She's your sister, Lena. Don't be so uptight." But when I once used Emily's hair straightener without permission, it was a full-blown lecture about respecting other people's things. It got to the point where I started avoiding the common areas of the house altogether. If I came into the living room and Cooper was sprawled out on the couch, I'd be told to sit somewhere else because he's comfortable there. If I made dinner, Emily would sometimes help herself to the bigger portion without asking, and my parents would shrug it off. These little moments piled up over the years, layering one on top of the other until it became something much heavier. I stopped feeling like a daughter or a sister in that house. I felt like a guest who had overstayed her welcome, someone whose value was always measured against how much she could give to Emily or Cooper. And deep down, I knew it was only a matter of time before something happened that would push me past my breaking point. I just didn't know how soon that moment would come. It started with a dull ache in my stomach late one afternoon. I figured it was something I ate, so I tried to brush it off. But within an hour, the cramps turned sharp, and I was running to the bathroom, my body rejecting everything I had eaten. The nausea was relentless. My head spun every time I moved. By nightfall, I was shivering under a blanket, drenched in sweat. Emily was out of town for the weekend, so the house was quieter than usual. Mom and Dad were in the living room watching TV, while Cooper snoozed between them like he owned the place. I managed to shuffle in, leaning against the wall for balance. My voice came out weak and raspy. I think I need to go to urgent care. I can't stop throwing up. They barely looked up. What's wrong? Dad asked, sounding more annoyed than concerned. I don't know. I'm so dizzy. I can barely stand, I said, gripping the doorway. Mom sighed, like I had just interrupted something important. Lena, it's probably just a stomach bug. Drink some water and rest. You'll be fine. No, I really think I need a doctor, I insisted, fighting back tears. Please. I can't even keep water down. That's when Dad shook his head. We can't leave Cooper alone. You know how anxious he gets. If we both go, he'll panic. I stared at them, thinking I'd misheard. You can't be serious. I'm telling you, I'm really sick. Mom's tone turned sharp. We're serious. It's late, and Cooper needs his dinner and a walk soon. If it gets worse, we'll figure something out tomorrow. I felt my throat tighten. Tomorrow might be too late. Stop being dramatic, she said, already turning back to the TV. Go lie down. You'll feel better after some sleep. I stood there for a moment, stunned. My legs wobbled, and I grabbed the wall to steady myself. I wanted to scream, to make them understand how bad it was, but my voice failed me. I stumbled back to my room, clutching my stomach. The night dragged on in waves of pain and nausea. I couldn't keep anything down, not even a sip of water. My body felt like it was shutting down, my lips dry and cracked, my heart pounding from dehydration. At one point, I tried to crawl to the kitchen for water, but the hallway seemed endless. Sometime past midnight, I got up to go to the bathroom again. My vision blurred, black spots dancing in front of my eye. I reached for the doorframe, but my hand missed. The cold tile rushed up to meet me, and everything went dark. The last thing I remember before losing consciousness was the faint sound of Cooper barking in the distance, his dinner long past served, while I lay on the bathroom floor, completely alone. I woke up to the beeping of a heart monitor and the sharp scent of disinfectant. My throat felt like sandpaper, my lips were cracked, and an 4-line was taped to my arm. It took a moment for my eyes to focus on the white ceiling above me. I blinked, confused, trying to piece together how I'd gotten there. Then I heard a familiar voice, Mrs. Henderson, our neighbor, speaking softly to someone. She noticed I was awake and leaned over, relief in her eyes. Oh, thank God. You scared me half to death, Lena, she said, squeezing my hand gently. She explained that she had come over in the morning to drop off a casserole and found me lying unconscious on the bathroom. You were burning up, and you wouldn't wake up. I called 911 right away. Her voice trembled as she spoke. The doctor came in shortly after and told me I had a severe case of salmonella and was dangerously dehydrated. Another few hours, and your body could have started shutting down completely, he said. The words hit me like ice. A few hours. That was the margin between living and not. When my parents finally showed up, I thought for a moment, just a moment, that maybe they'd be shaken, maybe I'd see some sign that they realized how close they'd come to losing me. But instead, Mom's first words were, "We didn't know Cooper would be so upset after the ambulance came. He wouldn't stop pacing all night." Dad nodded, adding, "He didn't even want his breakfast this morning. You know how sensitive he is." I stared at them, waiting for the part where they'd ask how I was, or apologize for not taking me seriously. It never came. They asked a few perfunctory questions. How long would I be in the hospital? When could I come home? But the conversation always circled back to Cooper. Later that afternoon, Emily arrived, still in her travel clothes. She barely looked at me before launching into a tirade. Do you have any idea how scared Cooper was with all that noise? The sirens were so loud, he was shaking when I called home. Mom said you collapsed. What? You couldn't have just told someone you felt bad instead of making it into a whole drama. I was too weak to argue, but inside something cracked. This wasn't misunderstanding. This wasn't them not realizing how sick I was. It was a choice. They had weighed my life against Cooper's comfort, and I had lost. I lay back against the stiff hospital pillow, letting her words wash over me without responding. In that moment, I understood something with absolute clarity. Nothing I did, nothing I said, would ever make me a priority in that house. And once I was strong enough to stand again, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I'd been home from the hospital for a few days, still weak but able to move around. My appetite hadn't fully come back, so I spent most of my time in my room, sipping water and trying to regain my strength. One evening, I went to the hallway to get a glass of tea and stopped when I heard voices coming from the kitchen. At first, I didn't mean to listen. But then I heard Emily's voice, sharp and dripping with disdain. She's so dramatic. Honestly, if she can't handle being here, she should leave. My stomach tightened. Mom's voice followed, calm but dismissive. Emily, we just have to keep things peaceful for Cooper. He's been through enough lately with all that chaos. We can't have him stressed again. Dad mumbled something I couldn't make out, but it was the same low, agreeing tone I'd heard all my life when he didn't want to challenge Mom or Emily. I stood frozen, my fingers gripping the wall. They weren't worried about how close I'd come to dying. They weren't wondering what they could do to make me feel safer or more cared for. They were talking about keeping things peaceful for the dog. In that moment, every buried memory came flooding back. The nights I'd slept on the couch because Cooper needed the guest room. The mornings I'd walked him in freezing rain while Emily slept in. The time Emily ruined my favorite dress and laughed when I got upset. The way Mom always told me to let it go for the sake of family harmony. I realized this wasn't a one-time failure. It was the way they'd always been. The hospital scare didn't open their eyes. It only made them more certain that I was the problem. And the worst part? They didn't even care if I stayed. I quietly backed away from the kitchen and returned to my room, my hands shaking, not from weakness this time, but from anger. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor, and knew I was done. Not just done living there, but done trying to make them see my worth. If I left silently, they'd tell themselves I was overreacting, that I'd come crawling back when I cooled off. No. This time, they were going to understand exactly why I was walking away. That night, as I lay in bed, I started mentally cataloging every moment they'd chosen Emily or Cooper over me. Every time they'd made me feel invisible. I knew I couldn't change them, but I could make sure my words stayed with them. It wouldn't be a fight or a scene. It would be something quieter, sharper, and impossible to ignore. I didn't know exactly how yet, but I knew the form it would take. I would leave behind the truth, written in a way they couldn't twist. And once it was done, I'd walk out of that house for the last time, on my own terms. Once I made the decision to leave, everything became clearer. I didn't tell a soul in my family, not because I was afraid they'd stop me, but because I knew they wouldn't care enough to try. The only person I confided in was Jessica, a coworker I'd grown close to over the past year. When I mentioned that I was thinking about getting out, she didn't hesitate. "I've got a spare room," she said. "It's small, but it's yours if you want it. No rent until you're on your feet." That offer felt like a lifeline. I told her I needed a week to make arrangements, and we worked out the detail. She gave me a spare key and helped me plan the move so it wouldn't draw attention. Over the next several days, I started quietly shifting my life out of my parents' house, one small piece at a time. A sweater here, a stack of books there, toiletries slipped into my tote bag on my way to work. I knew if I tried to pack everything at once, it would cause questions I wasn't willing to answer. At night, when everyone was asleep, I'd sit at my desk and work on the letter. It wasn't a rant or a list of insults. I didn't want them to write me off as emotional or overreacting. Instead, I wrote it like a record, cold, detailed, and undeniable. I started from childhood. The soccer game they missed because Emily wanted to go to a friend's birthday party. The Christmas when my gift was a clearance sweater while Emily got the expensive watch she'd been hinting at. The countless times I was told to just let her have it when she took my things. Then I moved on to more recent years. The way they rearranged furniture so Cooper could have his favorite spot. How I slept on the couch so the dog could have the guest room. How I walked him in storms while Emily stayed inside. And finally, the night that changed everything. The night I begged for help, and they left me on the bathroom floor because Cooper needed them more. Every line was deliberate, every example chosen to remind them of the choices they'd made. I ended the letter with the one truth I knew they couldn't escape. If I had died that night, I know you would have said Cooper needed you more. I just can't be in a family where that's true. When I read it back to myself, my hands trembled, not from fear, but from the finality of it. There would be no going back after this. The letter wasn't meant to change them. It was meant to close the door for me, so I'd never doubt why I walked away. And soon, very soon, I would leave it behind and disappear from their lives for good. The night before I left, I barely slept. I kept going over the plan in my head, making sure I hadn't forgotten anything. My clothes, my documents, my laptop, all the essentials were already at Jessica's place. The only things left in my room were a few worn-out sweaters, an old lamp, and memories I didn't want to take with me. When my alarm went off at 5 a.m., the house was silent. I slipped out of bed, my bare feet cold against the wooden floor. I moved quietly, not wanting to wake anyone. The air in the hallway felt different that morning. Still, heavy, like the house knew I wasn't coming back. In the kitchen, I placed my bedroom key on the counter next to the folded letter. It sat there like a weight, holding all the words I'd never been able to say out loud. I imagined the moment my mom would find it, maybe later that morning while making coffee. Would she even read it right away? Or would she push it aside, assuming it was something trivial? I didn't know, and honestly, I didn't care anymore. As I turned to leave, I heard the faint sound of nails clicking on the floor behind me. I looked down the hallway and saw Cooper standing there, head tilted, watching me. His tail wagged lazily, and for a moment my chest tightened. He wasn't the problem. He had never asked to be at the center of this mess. I knelt down and ran my fingers through his fur. "It's not your fault," I whispered, giving him one last pat. His warm eyes blinked back at me, and for a second, I wondered if he somehow understood that I was saying goodbye. I straightened up, slipped on my jacket, and opened the front door. The cold morning air rushed in, carrying the smell of wet grass. I stepped outside, pulling the door shut behind me as quietly as I could. My car was parked halfway down the driveway. I walked to it without looking back at the house. If I turned around, I might hesitate, and I couldn't afford that. Not today. Sliding into the driver's seat, I took a deep breath and started the engine. The sound was louder than I expected in the stillness of the morning, but no lights flicked on inside the house. No one was coming to stop me. As I drove away, the sun was just starting to rise, painting the sky in pale shades of pink and gold. The road ahead felt unfamiliar, but it was mine. Every mile between me and that house felt like a layer of weight peeling off my shoulders. I didn't glance in the rearview mirror once. Whatever was behind me could stay there. I had a new life waiting, and for the first time in years, I was ready to claim it. 3 days passed before I heard anything from them. I had been settling into Jessica's spare room, unpacking my things bit by bit, enjoying the quiet that didn't feel heavy or judgmental. On the 4th morning, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mom. "We got your letter. We didn't know you felt that way." I read it twice, hoping maybe I'd missed something, some hint of remorse, or even a simple "I'm sorry." But it wasn't there. Just a neat little sentence that shifted the responsibility back to me, as if my pain was something they couldn't have possibly noticed. Years of being overlooked flashed through my mind, and the message felt like confirmation of exactly why I'd left. A few hours later, another notification lit up my phone. This time it was from Emily. Just 3 words, dramatic as always. That was it. No surprise, no attempt to understand, no acknowledgement of what had happened. I stared at the screen for a moment, then calmly blocked her number. The relief I felt was instant, like shutting a door on a room that had been full of smoke. In the days that followed, I began to notice how different life could feel without that constant undercurrent of tension. Jessica's apartment wasn't fancy, but it was warm in a way that had nothing to do with the heater. We cooked dinner together, laughed about little things, and talked about work without every conversation turning into a minefield. For the first time in years, I could eat breakfast without being asked if I'd walked the dog yet. I could sit on the couch without being told to move, because Cooper likes that spot. I could sleep through the night without the sound of nails clicking against the hardwood outside my door at 2 in the morning. One evening, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, looking out at the quiet street. The thought hit me. This was what it felt like to be enough. No proving myself, no competing for affection, no bracing for the next careless remark. Just existing and being okay with it. Every now and then, my mind drifted back to the house I'd left behind. I wondered if Mom had read my letter again, or if she'd tucked it away somewhere and pretended it didn't exist. I pictured Emily rolling her eyes, probably telling anyone who would listen that I'd overreacted. But the truth was, none of that mattered anymore. The silence from them wasn't painful, it was peaceful. I didn't have to explain myself, and I didn't have to justify leaving. For years, I'd been made to feel like second place in my own family, always coming after my sister and her dog. Now, I was finally living somewhere I didn't have to fight for a place at all. And that, more than anything, made me feel free. I never reached out to them again. No calls, no texts, no birthdays or holidays. It was as if a door had closed behind me, and I had no intention of opening it again. But in a small town, you don't have to be in touch to hear about people. Mrs. Henderson, the neighbor who had saved my life that night, became my occasional source of update. She dropped me a quick message now and then, never with malice, just a quiet acknowledgement that she knew the truth and thought I deserved to know what was going on. One afternoon, about 2 months after I left, she told me, "People around here have been talking. Your folks don't look too happy these days." I didn't ask for details, but she gave them anyway. Apparently, word had gotten around about my parents refusing to take me to the hospital because of Cooper. At first, it was just whispers at the grocery store or in line at the post office. Then the whispers turned into questions. Did they really leave their own daughter sick just for a dog? Is that why she moved out so suddenly? The thing about small towns is people remember everything, and they love a story. The more it spread, the more my parents started keeping to themselves. Mrs. Henderson said she'd seen Mom ducking her head in public and Dad avoiding conversations altogether. Emily, who had always thrived on being the center of attention, didn't escape it either. Her perfect family image took a hit. She'd post smiling pictures of herself and Cooper, but people weren't reacting the same way. A few even asked her outright if it was true. Emily apparently brushed it off, but the damage was done. Invitations stopped coming. Friends became distant. She wasn't the golden child in everyone's eyes anymore. I didn't take pleasure in it the way you might expect. There was no moment of gloating, no urge to run back and say, "See? This is what you get." But I would be lying if I said there wasn't a quiet satisfaction in knowing the truth had made its way to them, and that they couldn't hide behind their carefully crafted image anymore. It wasn't revenge in the way most people think of it. I didn't do anything to ruin them. I simply told the truth, left, and let the rest take care of itself. They had built their reputation on being a close, loving family, and now people saw the cracks for what they really were. Sometimes I'd walk through town and catch sight of them from a distance. I never changed my route or tried to avoid them, but they never approached me either. And that was fine. I had no interest in reopening old wounds. The beauty of it was simple. By walking away, I'd force them to live with their choices. And in a place where everyone knows your business, that was punishment enough. A year passed faster than I expected. When I first left my parents' house, I thought the ache of betrayal would follow me forever, but life has a way of filling the empty spaces when I had found a better job, one that paid well and actually appreciated my work. Jessica, my roommate, had become one of my closest friends, and my circle slowly grew with people who genuinely wanted me around. Somewhere along the way, I started dating Mark. He wasn't flashy or over the top. He was steady, kind, and attentive in ways that still caught me off guard. When I got sick with the flu a few months into dating, he didn't hesitate to bring soup, check my temperature, and make sure I was drinking enough water. It was such a basic act of care, but it hit me hard. I realized how rare that had been in my own family. My days were lighter now. I no longer walked on eggshells, worried about what mood my parents or Emily would be in, or whether Cooper's needs would somehow take priority over mine. I decorated my own space, cooked meals I liked, and could finally rest without feeling like an afterthought in my own home. Every now and then, I'd see Emily in town, usually walking Cooper. She'd keep her eyes forward, and I'd do the same. There was no anger in me anymore, just a quiet detachment. We were strangers now, bound only by blood that meant very little in practice. Cooper would glance at me sometimes, tail wagging faintly, and for a brief second, I'd remember the mornings I used to feed him, or the times I'd sneak him treats. It wasn't his fault. It never had been. I didn't miss them, not really. What I missed was the idea of a family that cared, the version of them I had wished existed but never truly did. And that was the hardest truth to accept. You can't make people love you the way you need, no matter how much you try. When I looked back on that night, the one where my life could have ended if not for Mrs. Henderson, I didn't think about revenge anymore. I thought about survival. Leaving wasn't about punishing them. It was about saving myself from a life where I would always be second to someone or something else. The real revenge, if you could even call it that, was simple. I had built a life without them, a happy, full, and peaceful life that proved they weren't necessary for my well-being. Every laugh with friends, every quiet night reading, every small joy was a reminder that I had chosen myself, and it had been the right choice. They taught me what love shouldn't feel like, and I'll never forget that lesson. Do you believe Lena made the right choice by leaving her family behind, or should she have given them another chance? Share your thoughts down below. I'm curious to hear your perspective. And if you like hearing real-life stories like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you're always up to date.